There are many cultural differences between Westerners and Easterners. For Westerners, the Japanese have some rules and customs that might even seem shocking, especially in schools, where they practice very different and unusual traditions. And that's exactly what we are going to explore here today. In Japan, children learn to be independent from an early age. Starting in elementary school, parents are not allowed to accompany their children to school. This rule varies from one region to another, but most schools do not permit adults to escort the children. Some schools divide the task among several parents who stand along the entire route, monitoring the student's journey. In others, teachers help guide them during the first days of class until they learn the way on their own. But in most schools throughout the country, older elementary students are responsible for taking the younger children to school. When leaving home, students who live farther away may travel long distances on their own. But as they approach the school, the group of children becomes much larger. It is not permitted to use cars, bicycles, or school buses to make this aspect of school life easier. Principals and teachers view the journey to and from school as part of the children's learning experience. Many Japanese schools value uniformity. It is not enough to wear the full school uniform. One's appearance must also be impeccable, adhering to the rules. A particularly controversial rule that catches the attention of foreigners concerns the color and hairstyle of the students' hair, whether boys or girls. There was a time when some schools began banning certain hairstyles, such as ponytails. Girls are not allowed to have curly hair and must keep it always straight, and boys cannot have long hair. In addition, no school allows students to have dyed or bleached hair. If a student's hair color differs from black, they must prove it with childhood photos and have their parents sign a document attesting to their natural hair color. The strictest schools, those that closely monitor student appearance, have even asked students with naturally non-black hair to dye it black to maintain uniformity. Accessories such as earrings or piercings are, of course, out of the question. In hot countries, some schools may provide pants as well as shorts for colder or hotter days, along with shirts or jackets that students can wear as they prefer. However, in Japan, there are many more uniforms, and they cannot be alternated. During winter, for example, one is required to wear the official winter uniform, which is much warmer. It does not matter if a particular day turns out warmer than the rest. The students still must wear that specific uniform. For physical education classes, they change clothes, also putting on the appropriate seasonal uniform. The worst part is that in Japan, schools do not have air conditioning or fans. The best they can do to control the temperature is close the classroom windows. Some more modern schools in extremely cold regions already have electric heaters, but the heat must be endured as part of the lesson and discipline. Even though the age of consent in some parts of Japan can be as low as 12 years old, parents in the country generally discourage their children from getting involved in romantic relationships. In schools, any form of romance is strictly prohibited, but usually, most students are not interested in such matters anyway. They are taught from a young age to focus on their responsibilities, and although educational institutions try to instill the importance of family, when these students grow up, they continue to show little interest in serious relationships. Arranged marriages remain very common in Japan. Fortunately, children usually obey this rule. However, it is causing a serious issue with the birth rate. In Japan, there are currently more elderly people than children, and each passing year the gap between birth and death rates seems to increase. The government and the population attempt to combat this in various ways, but since students spend their entire lives hearing that they cannot date, this problem may persist for a long time. An interesting fact about Japanese schools is that they all have swimming pools, and we are not talking about private schools. In Japan, private schools are incredibly rare. Only members of the nobility, celebrities, and children of very wealthy individuals attend these elite institutions. But there is no reason for ordinary people to desire private schools, since public ones meet all the needs a student could have, including swimming classes. It does not matter if you cannot swim. That is precisely what the swimming class is for. All students, whether they fear water or not, must participate until they become good swimmers. Fortunately, teachers avoid scheduling swimming classes during winter so that children do not risk getting sick. Wearing the proper uniform is not enough. Elementary students must carry their books and school materials in a special backpack called a randoseru. These backpacks began being used in 1885, shortly after the same randoseru were introduced to the military at that time. In the past, all backpacks were black, but after a while, girls started using red ones, and boys continued with black. This distinction, however, has been changing in recent years, with new colors introduced for everyone. Still, many schools reject the idea of colorful backpacks, especially in rural towns, where the students themselves may bully those who choose different colors from the traditional ones. The backpacks, similar to those originally developed for the Army, are very resistant and versatile, featuring various compartments for each type of school material. The outer covering is also splash-resistant, making it excellent for rainy days. In Japanese schools, there are generally no cooks or other non-teaching staff. Even though students spend the entire day at school, as most are full-time, the institution itself does not provide meals. It is up to the students to cultivate, prepare, and serve the food. Younger classes tend the garden and look after animals, while older students prepare meals in cooking and home economics classes. Each class takes turns serving the food and then washing the pots, while each student is responsible for washing their own plates and utensils. And do not think that students dislike these school subjects. Younger ones who still cannot cook eagerly await moving up a grade to finally reach these culinary courses. Remember, students must eat what is served. If they do not like the food, they simply go without, as they are not allowed to bring lunches from outside. This may surprise you, but in Japan there are no janitors, custodians, or any type of non-teaching school staff beyond the teachers. They and the students are responsible for all types of building maintenance. And of course, cleaning is included in the students' daily tasks. A classic scene of Japanese school cleanings is students running down long corridors with their hands on the floor, holding a wet cloth first and then a dry one to finish. They start by using brooms to remove larger debris, but the thin layer of dust can only be removed with a squeegee, or in their case, with their own hands. This part, using cloths by hand, is always left for last, so students are always eager to finish the job and head home. Each week, a group is responsible for the daily cleaning, lifting all the desks and tidying the hallways around their own classroom. In the strictest Japanese schools, even the girls' underwear is part of the uniform. They must wear white underwear to avoid violating the school's dress code. In more extreme cases, teachers conduct inspections to ensure the girls are following this rule. The white color also ensures that inspectors can check whether the girls are maintaining proper hygiene. Students are not allowed to wear dirty or stained underwear, as these marks symbolize imperfections both in the educational institution and in the students' lives. Fortunately, this practice is not very common in Japan, occurring only in a few more extreme schools. Some years ago, the government banned underwear inspections in schools, but significant oversight is still needed to ensure this is not happening in the more remote, rural regions where the education system is more traditionalist. Because Japanese schools are full-time, they have more time for students to learn other important life subjects beyond the common ones like mathematics or geography. In high school, students can join clubs and choose special subjects, but until then, elementary-level children have several mandatory subjects, for example, agriculture and cooking, where they interact with food from its origin on the farm. There are many other subjects, such as music, carpentry, and home economics, which they must study throughout the entire year, learning far more than just superficial basics. In the first grade, students begin to interact lightly with music through instruments as simple as castanets. As the years go by, they move on to the melodica, the flute, and even interact with Japanese orchestral instruments such as giant drums called taiko. Over the 6 years of elementary school, they learn all the musical theory should they wish to specialize later in high school. It may seem surprising, but the Japanese don't worry too much about passing grades. Over there, no one repeats a grade. In most countries around the world, students need to get good grades to progress. There, until the end of high school, grades are not that important, with grades only becoming significant in higher education. The Japanese care much more about students' behavior, how they receive and use information, than about red or blue marks. However, at the end of the year, they still receive a report card with all the grades from tests, activities, and homework. So, even though teachers do not emphasize the need for good grades to move up, parents can become quite upset if their children bring home a poor report card. Consequently, students still make an effort to get good grades. After children complete early childhood education and elementary school, they are ready to start a new stage of their lives, much closer to adulthood, through high school. There, subjects become more complex and students can choose some study clubs to participate in, adding to their mandatory core subjects. These clubs cover an incredibly wide range of themes, such as literature, martial arts, sports, or more cultural activities like the tea ceremony and flower arrangement. Each of these clubs counts as elective class time for the students, similar to the high school system in the United States. Boys generally prefer clubs that involve more physical activity, such as soccer or judo, while girls tend to choose cultural clubs to enhance their gracefulness, like the tea ceremony club, where they learn the correct and formal way to conduct themselves in traditional Japanese gatherings. In Japan, when high school students have the opportunity to choose some of their own subjects, they have far more options than students from other parts of the world. Japan offers subjects unique to its own cultural and historical tradition. For example, Kendo, which literally means the way of the sword. Contrary to what most people might think upon seeing a student of Kendo or Kyudo, they are not necessarily learning a sport or martial art, but instead are developing discipline and mental and emotional fortitude. The Way of the Sword does not teach many combat techniques. Instead, it focuses on the ancient values of a Japanese warrior. Kyudo is also more than just archery. Rather than focusing solely on scoring higher points, Kyudo practitioners learn an entire philosophy, how to breathe correctly, and how to meditate before releasing their arrows. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.